Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Kim and welcome back to Uncommonkim. So, today I thought I would do a bit of a reading wrap-up. I've never actually done a wrap-up before on here, on my channel, but I really like watching them, so I thought we had a good reading month in September, so why not do that? In the month of September, I read a total of 8 books. I'm so happy with this. This was great. So I started one series. I also read one whole series. I read 4 standalones, and I also read one graphic novel. Actually, it was a manga. That's a lie. But I was really happy with the reading I got done for September. Obviously, September was also Magical Readathon, and I was able to fulfill all my prompts for Magical Readathon, which I was super over the moon for. I did do 2 vlogs for Magical Readathon if you want to see my in-depth details and thoughts on the books throughout, but I am going to go through each book I read and briefly go over my thoughts for each book and the rating that I gave them. So the first book that I read in the month of September was A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed the characters and the plot. I enjoyed pretty much everything about it. The only thing I didn't enjoy was that it didn't need to be this long. A lot of the points in this was dragged out massively, and for me that just made it like I didn't enjoy it as much. Otherwise, I really enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed seeing the growth of our main character. So in this we follow Mona, who is 14 years old and is a wizard, and she can't control anything apart from sourdough. Basically she's like a magical baker, I think it's the best way to describe it, and she works in her aunt's bakery, I believe, and she ends up finding a dead body on the floor of her aunt's bakery, and then discovers that there is somebody going around killing magical folk, and that she's really worried that she is going to be next. We meet so many different characters along the way in this story, and I love it. And I love the build-up it had, and also the ending of the book was really good. I loved it so much. I did just find that it dragged a lot in the middle, but otherwise it was a really good read. I gave it 4 stars. This is another like cozy fantasy, I would call it, and very similar, like, so if you enjoyed Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher, you'll probably quite enjoy this one. It was just a really good cozy time. Cannot complain. Next we had my first 5-star of the month, which was Cat Plus Gamer Volume 1. So this is a manga where we follow a girl called Riko, who has an office job, and one day somebody comes into the office with a abandoned kitten, and she decides to take it on. But what her co-workers don't know about Riko is that she is a huge gamer. She spends all her evenings gaming, all her weekends gaming. As much as she possibly can, she will be gaming, and she then uses her gaming experience to learn how to look after a kitten. And this cat is so freaking cute, so cute. I actually love it. I'm not a massive cat person, I am more of a dog person, but after reading this it really made me want a cat. Because this cat was adorable. Yeah, and we also get to see her kind of coming out of her shell and doing certain things due to the cat. Also, her reaction to any time the cat does anything cute is adorable. I just love it. I love it so much. I'm really looking forward to reading volume 2. I don't own it yet, but I am going to buy it soon, and I really hope to read it before the end of the year, because this was a 5-star, so I can only imagine that the rest of the series gets better with this adorable cat. So yeah. Book I read was The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. I enjoyed this one. It was a 4-star. So in this we follow Heart and Mercy. So Mercy works at a undertaking business, a funeral director's, which is owned by her dad, but they're currently waiting for her brother to come and take over the business, when her brother arrives and tells her that she doesn't want to do that. So she ends up on this whole experience to persuade herself and her family that she loves this job, but no one will believe her. And along the way we meet the lovely Hart, who is, I can never remember the name, he's a marshal, and his tasked with patrolling the magical wilds of Tamria. It's an unforgivable job, and Hart's got nothing but time to ponder his loneliness. But he basically goes around collecting bodies to then deliver them to Mercy, where Mercy will then do the funeral bit and do what their wishes were. And there's also 2 rival funeral directors. So we have the one that Mercy works for, and then we have another one which is huge business. But yeah, this was a really cute, cozy fantasy romance. The fantastical elements weren't huge, but they were enough. That's what gave it more of like a cozy vibe. And it also gave me like Divine Rivals vibes, due to there being like a magical letter system where they found, so they were talking to each other through these letters but not knowing who they were talking to. So very similar to like Divine Rivals, where they have like the magical typewriters, but in here it's letters, and I just really enjoyed that aspect. And then seeing the slow burn, because it really is slow burn, of them then coming together, because they actually start off as enemies, they really don't like each other, they hate each other, but then becoming lovers. I loved it so much. There was also some LGBTQ plus rep in here as well, through a few other characters, but I'm also really excited to start the next one in this series, which is The Undermining of Twilight and Frank. And Twilight and Frank, I believe, was briefly mentioned in this, very, very briefly. But when I saw them appear, I went, oh my god, because I knew who they were. So I'm really excited to read that one. Hint, I'm reading it at the moment. But yeah, this was really, really good vibes. I really do recommend it if you quite love a cozy read, you do like mystery, and you do like a bit of fantasy. This is for you. 100%. The little review here literally says, the house in the Cerulean Sea meets You've Got Mail in this quirky, refreshing fantasy with a rom-com worthy twist. I've got like the Fairy Loot edition, which is really stunning, and then I also have the Fairy Loot edition of The Undermining of Twilight and Frank as well. So hopefully they'll do another Fairy Loot edition for the 3rd book that comes out next year, because I will buy that. I will buy that. Next book is a reread. It is the only reread I did in the month of September, but it was a very much needed one. And it is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. So I read this in preparation for Somewhere Beyond the Sea, which is the next book that came out in this, also in September. Hint to what the next couple of books might be. And in this we follow Linus Baker, who works for, what is it called? The Department of in charge of magical youth, and he is set the task of going to an island and basically keeping an eye on these children and seeing if everything is true and they are being looked after properly, as that is his job. And he ends up going to this island, and we meet the lovely Arthur and all of the children, and he ends up falling hard for Arthur, but also falling in love with the children and their little quirks and their little personalities, and each of the children has their own special magical abilities, and it is so cute and cozy. I love it so much. It is a book I gave 5 stars the first time I read it, and it is 5 stars again on my reread, and I loved my reread of this. It was so good. I love the relationship between Linus and Arthur. I love the protection that Arthur has for the children. I love the children. It is so good, and I really recommend listening to the audiobook of this, because I found that the narrator did the children amazing, because they each had their own voice, and because they are all each kind of different magical creatures, and that did so well with the narration, and I loved the narrator. I was so pleased to find out the narrator did this. It was the same narrator for book 1 and book 2. I loved it so much. So if you haven't read House of the Cerulean Sea, do it. Is basically what I'm getting at. Next book I read was for Pokeathon. We had a Pokeathon contest in the middle of September where we had to read a book that had a green cover or was 500 pages or both, and I didn't have time to read 500 pages, so I just went for a green cover, and I read Tress of the Emeral Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This was a 4-star read for me. I really did enjoy this one. I enjoyed the characters and the plot. Again, however, very similar to The Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, I just found it dragged quite a bit. I probably don't think it could have been this size. It could have been shorter, but otherwise I really enjoyed my time. I really did enjoy my time. I enjoyed the twists and the turns, and seeing Tress evolve as a character, from being on the island to going and finding the love of her life. So yeah, we follow Tress, who lives on an island with her family, which has an emerald green ocean, may I add. And then basically she has starting to fall for her best friend Charlie, but Charlie's father is like a king, and Charlie ends up getting sent away to get married, but then when the king returns, he returns without Charlie, saying that something disastrous happened, when in actual respect the king sold his son to the sorceress. So Tress then goes on this adventure to find Charlie and to save him from the sorceress, and by doing so she ends up on a ship with some funny and unfamiliar characters who then go to help her on her mission, and it is so good, so good. There's a talking rat. There's loads of things, so many things happen in this, and it was so good. But yeah, I did find again parts of it dragged out for me. Otherwise I did really enjoy my time with this. It was fun to see Tress find herself, and she was very much like a cooped up little girl who didn't want to go out and do things and just liked home of comforts, but to then jump on a ship and go and find Charlie, it was very much out of her comfort zone, but it was good to see her grow, and the friends she made along the way and the characters we discovered was so fun. Again, I listened to the audiobook of this while I read it through at the same time, and I really recommend doing that, especially with Brandon Sanderson's writing, because obviously it can be a lot. So this is a Cosmere novel, but it is kind of like a standalone. So you can read it on its own, or you can read it as part of the Cosmere, and as always with Brandon's worlds, they are huge and massive, and there's so much information, so being able to listen to the audiobook while reading, you kind of take in a bit more information. I just found it a lot easier to read, but obviously it depends on the way you read, but for me I just found that a lot easier. But yeah, this was a 4-star from me. Next we have the book that I slightly hinted at, that is Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. So this is the next book after The House of the Cerulean Sea, and I freaking love this. This was 5 stars, the easiest 5 stars I have ever given out a book in my freaking life. So we still follow Arthur and Linus. They still, oh, can I tell you that? We still follow them, and we still follow the children on the island, basically, but instead of it being through Linus's point of view, we are now following this through Arthur's point of view. So not going to spoil anything, do not panic, but we get a lot more in depth of Arthur's past, and also how he came to be on the island and how he has been treated his whole life, which is a really interesting to read, but also you really feel the love he has for these children and how much protection he has for these children. And one thing I really like about this is in House of the Cerulean Sea, you really understand that the children are not liked and not wanted, and in this it does just make you see it in a different light, that yes, these children are different, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're different, it really doesn't. You can be anything you want, whatever you want, whoever you want, and if people don't accept you, they're not worth it. They're really not worth it. And I love that aspect in this book. It really came through with that. Also seeing Arthur and Linus's relationship blossom in a different perspective was so cute and fuzzy, because you understand how Linus feels about Arthur, but then in here you can now understand how Arthur feels about Linus, and I loved that. You find out all sorts as well. So one of the other characters we have in this House of the Cerulean Sea is Zoe, who is a sprite, and she owns the island, like the island is hers, and we find out a lot of her backstory in this as well, and how she came to meet Arthur, which was great. Again, we have the children, we also have a new child, which was so cute, and I loved him. But we still have the same personalities of the children. It's set kind of like a year roughly after House on the Cerulean Sea, and the children are exactly the same. I just love them. I love them so much. Their quirks and their personalities. It was just so good. And one thing I pointed out in my vlog was we have an author's note at the end from TJ Klune, and he signed himself off at the end saying the anti-JK Rowling, and I was like, fair play, fair play. And I usually don't read author's notes at the ends of books because I just don't want to, I just can't be bothered, but I read this one and yeah, fair play TJ Klune, fair play. I 100% agree with you, and to anyone out there, my channel is a safe space. You can be whoever you want to be and I will support you. I could not give two shits. Whoever you are, I don't care. Like, and the way TJ Klune explains this in his author note, I'm like, I'm fucking with you. Be who you want to be, not what people want you to be, because if you're not happy, what's the fucking point? What is the fucking point? Thank you, TJ Klune. Love you. Chef's kiss. The next book I read was another cozy fantasy, and it was The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields. I actually loved this one. I really enjoyed myself. I, again, just found it dragged a little bit. Just a tiny bit, which is why it got 4 stars from me. Otherwise, I really enjoyed myself. I loved it. I loved the LGBTQ+ rep. I loved the grief story. So in this we follow Marigold, who has, she's always known she's a bit different, and she's never really known how, until her grandmother whisks her away to the family cottage on the tiny island of Innisfree to offer to train her as the next Honey Witch. So her mother decided to protect her and hide her away from the fact that she could be the next Honey Witch, but her grandmother has basically gone on and on being the Honey Witch, and it's time for her to pass it on to Marigold. So we go through Marigold getting trained and getting taught on how to be the next Honey Witch, and that part is so cute and cozy because you see her get to treat people using magic, and that's really cool. Then she unfortunately goes through a bit of grief and has to learn to deal with that, and also loneliness is a massive a massive part of this book, and seeing someone go through that and come out the other end is great. And then she meets the notorious Lottie Burke, who is grumpy as they come and doesn't believe in magic, and Marigold takes it upon herself to persuade Lottie to believe in magic and to stop being grumpy. And it is the cutest grumpy sunshine fantasy romance. It's very heavily fantasy. Romance is kind of like dribs and drabs, a lot more in the second half, but I really enjoyed that. Again, I found there were aspects that maybe it just kind of was like just prolonging the ending. I did really enjoy the part, so there was a part where Marigold went back to visit her family, and I really enjoyed that aspect, and from that point on to the end it was very fast paced and I really enjoyed that. But there were very slow aspects throughout which I wasn't really a fan of, but I still gave it 4 stars. I still really enjoyed this. I still highly recommend it. Again, I have a Fairy edition. This was one that came in one of the boxes, I think. I don't know which one. The May box. And I was so happy with this because I actually nearly bought it. And then it turned up in my Fairy box. I was like, great, I don't have to buy it. What have I? Except I kind of did buy it, but you know what I mean. But this was a really, really good read. Really quick read for me. I think I got so indulged with it. Again, audiobook was really good. The narrator was amazing. I really recommend that. Yeah, just a good all-round read, to be honest. I quite enjoyed myself. And the final book I read in September I actually no longer own. I hold it already. And that was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. So, let's talk. So I read this because it is the Literally Dead book club pick for September. And I was like, oh, I want to get involved in this. I read the synopsis. I loved the sound of the synopsis. I thought this is going to be great. And basically, if I read you the synopsis, we'll then go from there. So, some said it was tragic what happened to the Van Laars. Some said Van Laars deserved it, that they never even thanked the searchers who stayed out for 5 nights in the freezing forest trying to find their missing son. Some said there was a reason it took the family so long to call for help, that they knew what happened to the boy. Now, 15 years later, the daughter the family had in their grief had gone missing in the same wilderness as her brother. Some say the 2 disappearances aren't connected, and some say they are. Now, I thought, it's okay. I thought this would be nice, like dual timelines. Back when the boy went missing, back to when the girl went missing, finding out about the children, where the children are, maybe like a police point of view, investigation. I thought this is going to be sick. No. There were so many POVs, I couldn't keep track of who, what, where, when, why. There was unnecessary POVs, quite a few. It was a 400-page book, and for 300 pages, I considered DNFing it because it was just a pile of shit. I was like, where are the children? Okay. I read 200 pages of the book and still had no idea where the children were. No clues, no hints, nothing. It was just finding out about all of these extra characters that I couldn't give a shit about. I just did not have a good time. I forced myself through this so then I could go to the Literally Dead book club live show and slate it. And I just did not enjoy myself at all. I found it very slow, very repetitive, very boring. Again, we ended up having a police officer perspective, but not until like halfway through the book did this character appear, and we started to learn about her and her backstory and her family, and I was like, that's great, but let's get into like the investigation-y bit. And then it did. This was halfway through. We then had her investigating, interviewing the family members, finding out their points of view, finding out what they thought about when the boy went missing, which no one would talk about, or what their thoughts were on the girl going missing, and this, that, and whatever. But it was never that. It was always perspective of the mum, but she was off her fucking nut. or perspective of the daughter's best friend at the camp, but she didn't really make any sense, and it was a very pointless perspective, and I just did not really have a good time. I kind of enjoyed the more detective-y part. I really quite enjoyed that. However, the ending was shit. The ending, I hated it. I hated the ending. I really didn't enjoy myself. I, at the time, said it was a 3-star. I have since decided it's actually a 2. Because I just did not like it at all. I didn't enjoy myself. It was not a good book. I didn't enjoy the perspectives, the plot, the story, any of it really, and the ending just made me mad. It just made me really mad. I kept saying to my mum, because I was talking to her as I was reading it, and I kept telling her my predictions, and I said, I think this is what happened to the children, and I said, if I'm right, this is getting a 1-star. And because my prediction was kind of right but also kind of not, I gave it a 2. So I was like, I don't care. I don't care. But the live show is tomorrow, so I'm very excited to watch that, and hope I'm not the only one slating the book, because it was just bad. But yes, I've already unhauled the book, so I can't even show you it. But I don't recommend this, but I mean, if you want to give it a go and find out why I'm slating it so much, go for it. But up to you. But that is my wrap up for September. I read quite a few good books, mainly 4 or 5-star reads, apart from The God in the Woods, which I was so happy with. I hadn't had a great reading year so far, just due to mental health, anxiety, so to have a good month, and I'm fingers crossed we're going to continue that into October. I'm super excited. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these or what your best book was for September. I think my best is either House of the Cerulean Sea or Somewhere Beyond the Sea. I think Somewhere Beyond the Sea tops it for me. I think this is my best book of the month. Worst book is obviously The God of the Woods. I'm not going to go into details. But yeah, let me know if you've read any of these or what your top book was for September. I'd love to know. Like and subscribe if you are new, and I will see you all very soon for another video. Bye.